Hi, welcome back, and today's video is on one of my favorite forms of writing. It's known as flash fiction. It's basically a short story of extreme brevity. Generally speaking, it's going to be 750 to 1,000 words. What I try to do when I go about writing a piece of microfiction is I want to tell a story that's about 1,000 words. It'll usually end up being about 1,500 to 2,000 words. At that point, the goal is to condense it down to 1,000. It's surprisingly difficult to do. It gets to the point where you really are making every word count, and it's a really good way to work on narrative efficiency, removing superficial details and including only what is absolutely necessary to tell the story. Another great thing about it is that it's a good way to showcase your work. So let's just say someone is interested possibly in what you have written and you want to show them something, but typically people don't have time to read a really long piece. So if you give them a piece of microfiction, it only takes a few minutes to read. So that person is going to be much more willing and able to read it quickly and give you feedback. My personal method is to begin with a instance or a moment and then let a narrative emerge from that moment. I had an idea of what would happen if someone loaned a friend a library book and the friend lost the book. So, not the most exciting thing, but it kind of piqued my interest. And from that, I came up with something that was dramatic and compelling, or at least I tried to. Another one I had was a neighbor who uses a leaf blower all the time. Why is my neighbor always using a leaf blower, even when there's no leaves to blow? With that question, I was able to construct a narrative out of that. And again, what you're trying to do is take something simple and bring it to a kind of dramatic boiling point. It really is the closest writing comes to sculpting. You're really whittling the words down to the absolute essentials. So I first heard about flash fiction inadvertently. I was actually reading a collection of short stories by Chekhov. One of the first stories in the collection is the story Fat and Thin. It's one of his more famous stories, and I was struck by how short it was. I think it's about 1,000 words. I was amazed by how dramatic and fully realized the world was. So I did some more research and found out this was a whole world of storytelling. And there's writers out there who devote their careers mainly to writing microfiction. If you're looking for some writers to turn to kind of get inspired, I've picked out a couple of my favorites. The first we've got is a collection here by Lydia Davis. It is called Can't and Won't. Now, Lydia Davis is a pretty well-known writer. She's kind of has a cult following, but at this point she's pretty well established in the literary world. And she's also a translator of classic French novels. She's got one on Swan's Way, and then she's also done a well-known translation of Madame Bovary. So her fiction is very odd. It's funny, usually a little sad. Some are better than others. I mean, the collection has a lot of stories in it, and some of them I kind of was scratching my head. I just didn't really feel inspired reading them, but there's others that are really amazing. So I would highly recommend checking out Lydia Davis. All right, so next we've got Amy Hempel. She's got a collection here, came out last year called Sing to It. She has devoted her career to just writing short stories, and most of them are considered microfiction. She generally starts her stories with a really gripping, exciting, or interesting sentence, something that really pulls you in. And then she'll get very strange and experimental as her story goes on. She's very unpredictable. Oftentimes I'll start one of her stories and think I see what she's doing, and then she'll pull the rug out from under you. So Amy Hempel, definitely you want to check her out. She's really extraordinary and exhilarating. Lastly, I've got this collection my sister actually gave me. It is a Russian writer named Daniel Karms, and this volume is called Today I Wrote Nothing, one of my favorite titles. And this is a full collection of his works. Karms is a avant-garde writer from the 20th century. His work is highly experimental. He's a really strange guy. He had a pretty difficult and sad life, and he did die young. I think he was around 36 or 37 when he died. And his stories are very bizarre. They're very dark and very funny, often at the same time. He's hard to emulate, but very easy to appreciate. So do I have an absolute favorite piece of flash fiction? The answer right now is yes. I generally don't like picking favorites, but there is one by the writer George Saunders that I absolutely love. The story is called Sticks. It's in his collection, The 10th of December, but you can also read it online. I actually will have a link below so you can check it out if you haven't already. It is a heartbreaking and exhilarating tale, and it only takes a couple of minutes to read, and it will hopefully blow your mind like it did mine. So I love using analogies when talking about writing, and one I came up with for this topic is that a piece of microfiction is to a novel as a tiny house is to a mansion. And you can kind of expand on that as well, because a tiny house, if you've ever seen one, they look really small from the outside, and then you look inside and it's always surprising just how much room is in there. Ultimately, the most important thing to remember with flash fiction is that you can kind of get lost in the process of condensing it down, and you can kind of forget the most important thing, which is ultimately you are still trying to move your reader. You're trying to give them an emotional experience. You're trying to make them care about this story that is extremely brief. And that is very, very difficult to do. By no means have I mastered the craft. I consider myself a complete novice when it comes to microfiction, but I love working on it and I love improving on it with each story that I write. All right, so that wraps up our episode on flash fiction. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.